Hey guys, welcome back to yet another YouTube video. And well, the Australian Formula One Grand Prix practice is done, qualifying is done, and now it's time for the race. So in this video, it's sort of a qualifying report on qualifying yesterday. In my opinion, from results from all three periods of qualifying, and of course some things to talk about, and there's been a lot to talk about, and showcase my opinions. And also at the end of the video, I will be doing my predictions on who I think will win. Who do I think will win the race? Who do I think will be on the podium? And you know what? Yeah, I'll do a fastest lap. Who will get the extra bonus point for fastest lap? So first I'll run you through the results from all three qualifying sessions. So the first period of qualifying, Max Verstappen finished first in that session with a time of 1:18.580. His teammate Sergio Perez in the second, and the sister Red Bull in second, 2 tenths behind him. The two Ferraris third and fourth, with Leclerc in third, and Carlos Sainz in fourth. Fernando Alonso, who's been very quick all weekend in that Alpine, he ended up fifth in that session. Then it was Valtteri Bottas, Lando Norris in seventh, Lewis Hamilton in eighth, got into Q2, but he had to do it with I think in both Q1 and Q2 he made it into the next part of qualifying on both sessions with the last lap. I think, in my opinion. And then George Russell in ninth in the other Mercedes, and Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri ended up P10. And then the remaining guys that made it into Q2 were Esteban Ocon, Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, and Mick Schumacher. With the five guys that got knocked out in qualifying were Alex Albon in the Williams, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, after of course being Q3 at Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. He only managed to do one lap because, of course, as you all know, and I'll get into much detail about it later, he and Stroll and all around the Aston Martin team had a very eventful Saturday. Nicholas Latifi in 19th, and Lance Stroll, of course, didn't set a time for very obvious reasons, which I'll get to later. Adjust camera. So that was the order from Q1. Now for Q2. Now these are the top 10 that went through to Q3. So Sergio Perez finished up fastest in that session with a 1:18.340. With the two Ferraris behind him in Carlos Sainz in second, and Charles Leclerc in third, with Max Verstappen in fourth. Again, Fernando Alonso ended up being the best of the rest in that session in fifth. Lando Norris finished up sixth in that session with George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo, and Esteban Ocon were the ones that made it into Q3. So two Red Bulls, two Ferraris, two Mercedes, two McLarens, and two Alpines made it into Q3. And then the ones that got knocked out in Q2 were Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri. He ended up 9/100ths off of making Q3, which is a bit unlucky in my opinion. Valtteri Bottas, for the first time since Abu Dhabi 2016, when that was in his last race for Williams, he's not qualifying inside the top 10, or didn't make Q3. Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, and Mick Schumacher. So from positions of 13th from Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, and Mick Schumacher, I think they finished up in their same positions as they were in Q1, which was not surprisingly, to be honest. So we head into Q3, and of course, the battle for pole, and with his last flying lap, Charles Leclerc set an all-time track record with a 1:17.868. The only man to be in the 17s, with his rival from the last two races from Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, Max Verstappen, right behind him. Sergio Perez in third position. Lando Norris finished in fourth, and I'll get to the other Ferrari in a bit in a second. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell 5th and 6th, so they'll be on the third row together. Then Daniel Ricciardo ended up 7th, which was a great day for McLaren. I mean, of course, Lando Norris ended up being fastest in the third practice session, and of course, starting from 4th and 7th, which is a great day for McLaren. Even though they did say before the weekend started that this was a track that probably was more to their liking. It wasn't in Bahrain, and it was a bit of a step forward in Jeddah, but this was a track that was more to their liking, and bloody oath, they follow up on their word with 4th and 7th to start this race. Esteban Ocon in 8th position. Carlos Sainz in 9th. He had a shocker. But unfortunately, and a bit of unluckiness as well with the red flag being shown, which I'll mention about it in a moment. And I think he was on a quick lap, but probably could have put him on the second row, but unfortunately he had to back out of it because of the red flag situation. So that's and he did not and he wasn't on his game at all after the red flag. For the rest of Q3, after the red flag, he just wasn't on it for the last 6 minutes of the session. After that, and then Fernando Alonso ended up 10th with no time set. Because he ended up causing the red flag in Q3 because he had some hydraulic problems. Apparently, that's what he said. Because if you look back on the onboard, I hope F1 on social media hopefully gets this video out. If you've seen it, or actually, I recommend you finding the highlights for it on YouTube. It sounds like his engine cut out because while he was understeering into the gravel trap and towards the wall, his engine cut out. So I don't know if it was an hydraulic problem, with hydraulic pressure or a hydraulic situation, but the engine is completely cut, and then he just went straight over the wall. And it was a real shame because he said that pole position was on the cards, and his speed in the second sector when he was a session best before he did the crash at turn 11, it showed it, and he was fast. He and his Alpine have been fast in the second sector, which is the fast flowing track through the newly turned 6 and 7 through to the entrance of the new turn 9 and 10. He's been alongside with Verstappen and the Red Bulls. He's been quickest there all weekend, and unfortunately, of course, he just imagine if he didn't have that hydraulic problem, if he had that problem, as he went on and said last night in an interview. What if that happened at turn one at the end of that lap? He probably would have been on pole position. We'll be talking about the first time in a long time, probably in about a couple of years, that we had a non Mercedes Ferrari or Red Bull pole position. So, or actually no, first time since Russia, of course, obviously because of Lando Norris scoring pole position there. But you get the point. So yeah, so I'll run you through the starting grid now. So of course, Leclerc and Verstappen share the front row. That's going to be very exciting for the start of the race. Of course, Perez and Lando Norris on the second row. The third row is an all Mercedes affair with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell in 5th and 6th. 7th and 8th is our own Daniel Ricciardo. He's in P7 and he let's just say I'm not saying that he's a lock. He has I'm not saying he's a genuine chance, but he has a chance. And like I always say, a chance is better than no chance at all. So he does have a chance of a very good finish at Albert Park today. Esteban Ocon alongside him in the Alpine. Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso alongside on row 5. Now they did if you watch it on Freeway TV, they did mention that now it seems like it's Red Bull versus Leclerc now, because Sainz is starting that far back. Sorry for the dog in the background. Sorry for the dog in the, yeah. So basically, yeah, it might hinder them, but you never know. With the races, you never know what's going to happen. It might be a safety car, and that meant Sainz would go back up the grid. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, and then the 6th row. So the 6th row of the grid would be Pierre Gasly and Valtteri Bottas. The 7th row of the grid, of course, you got Yuki Tsunoda and Zhou Guanyu in 13th and 14th. 15th and 16th is an all Haas 8th row of Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen. And you might be thinking yourself, K-Max finished 17th, why is he starting 16th? I'll get to that in a bit. Mick Schumacher, I already said that actually. 9th row, the second last row of the grid, you got Sebastian Vettel and Nicholas Latifi in 17th and 18th. And then the final row of the grid, you got Lance Stroll, who got a free place grid penalty for causing the incident with Nicholas Latifi, which I'll mention in full detail in a bit. And Alexander Albon will start from the rear of the grid. We'll start from the rear of the grid because the reason being, he stopped at the end of Q1. He stopped at the exit of turn 11. And I saw in it and I was like, something must be wrong with the car. And then I went on social media. I think it was last night or maybe this morning as I'm recording this. That he was disqualified from qualifying for a fuel breach, which meant he ran out of fuel. So, which of course, if as you guys all know, as an F1 fan, that's a big no. You can't run out of fuel at the end of a session. It happened a lot back in the at the early years of the last decade, where a lot of drivers, I remember, I remember twice in the 2012 season. I remember Lewis Hamilton qualified on pole at the Spanish Grand Prix, and that buddy ran out of fuel at the end of the session, and he had to start from the rear of the grid because of the breach. And the same again at 2012 in Abu Dhabi Grand Prix when Sebastian Vettel, I think he qualified on pole as well, but he ran out of fuel and did the exact same thing, and he had to send to the back of the grid, but he did end up getting a podium out of it. It did end up getting a podium out of it, which he often did during these Red Bull dominant years. So it looks like Albon has suffered a similar fate. He is now going to start last. He was originally going to start from 16th. Now he's going to start last. So now we get into the actual report. So first so we go from the slowest team to the fastest team, which of course we'll start off with Aston Martin. So Vettel. So of course, if you guys didn't watch FP3, Vettel and Stroll were involved in separate accidents during that session. With Vettel, of course, it went through turn 9 and 10. As he exited turn 10, he must have had a wiggle on, and then went straight into the wall on the exit. I like the fact that Mick Schumacher went over there and checked on him and see if he was okay, because he suffered a worse crash in qualifying at Jeddah, as we all know, that he went to hospital for checks for, basically. So it was nice to see him check on him and see if he was okay. And then Stroll, obviously, right at the end of FP3, he was of course, one of a few drivers in all categories to be called out by the infamous, probably I should say now, infamous turn 11. Ran wide, went across the gravel and went into the wall. And of course, because he was, because I got my laptop here, since he was trying to turn in here, and of course the wheel was like this. Once it hit the wall, the left front wheel actually went bent back, and some people have said that, which is true, that sort of incident where the suspension bends back might damage the chassis of the car. And I don't think it did, because obviously it went out, but it went out for qualifying, but for Stroll, not for long, because he was caught up in the incident with Nicholas Latifi. Now I'm going to give you my opinion on this. Let me just put my laptop down. So I think, for me, 110% it's Stroll's fault. I think that the incident was justified, and I did watch the qualifying highlights on YouTube, and I did hear Martin Brundle say maybe Stroll was waiting for the one of the Alfa Romeos to go through, I'm sorry, I did not see at all that the Alfa Romeo was going to go through on Stroll. So and of course, I think Latifi was trying to let, I think for me at least, he was trying to let Stroll through, and this has been a very big talking point throughout the weekend, not just yesterday, but throughout Friday for the first two practice sessions as well, as people getting each other's way. That has been the big talking point. So I think Latifi did the right thing in trying to let Stroll through. In trying to let Stroll through, and but then Stroll slowed, and the way that Stroll reacted on the radio, I just could not believe what he said on the radio. It's like, oh, he hit me, But if you can clearly see on the onboard, as Latifi was about to go by, he went like that straight away. Like I'm not saying the D word deliberate. Like I'm not saying that, but it looked like it was deliberate, even though he didn't mean to. So he just went like that, and I'm sorry, but I don't see I don't see why Stroll would do that, and for Martin Brundle to say, I'm not criticizing or anything. I just could not believe what he said. That there was potential that he was trying to let the Alfa Romeo through. I can't remember which one it was, but I didn't see the Alfa Romeo looking to go past Stroll before that incident. So. And I think he was a long way back. Anyways, I might have to look at that incident again, where that Alfa Romeo was. But I think he was a bit, from my memory of looking back at it now, I think he was a bit too far back. So I think Stroll, needed to put his hand up and said, that's my bad. That's my bad. Latifi, he was just an innocent bystander. He was just the wrong place at the wrong time. He tried to do the right thing in letting Stroll through, but obviously it didn't sort of progress out that way. So that was Aston Martin's eventful Saturday. Not much to say for Williams, obviously, apart from, of course, Alexander Albon getting disqualified from qualifying for, of course, a fuel breach after his car stopped at the exit of turn 11. Haas, it was very strange, actually, considering that Magnussen has qualified in Q3 for both Bahrain and Jeddah, which is an amazing story for K-Mag. But to see him, of course, but I don't think those both Haas boys have been been there all weekend, and I think both of them have an excuse for that. I think, of course, Mick Schumacher is still probably recovering from that horrifying crash of qualifying at Jeddah, and I think Kevin Magnussen's still recovering from a bit of an illness before the weekend started. So you can excuse them for putting on a bit of an average performance for Haas when in the last two races. Magnussen had qualified and finished in the top 10 in both races at Bahrain, at Sakir, and in Jeddah. So you can excuse them for that. Alfa Romeo, of course, Valtteri Bottas for the first time since, as I said earlier, since the 2016 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, did not qualify into Q3. Of course, he had a 100% record in his Mercedes career of qualifying in Q3, and of course extended that in his first two races for Alfa Romeo. Unfortunately, he didn't quite couldn't quite get into Q3 yesterday, but it was very close, and between the top 12, between the top 12 in Q3 and Q2 in that one, and of course Zhou Guan Yu, of course, a very good qualifying effort for him, considering it's his first time at the Albert Park circuit. Of course, being the first Chinese driver to compete in Formula One. Moving on to AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, as I said earlier, was 9/100ths off making Q3 in 11th place, which is again so unlucky. And then Yuki Tsunoda, Yuki Tsunoda, of course, and I think there was an interesting stat made on the Channel 10 telecast. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Tom Clarkson that said this, that before this weekend, 18 out of the 20 drivers had qualified into Q2. The only two before this weekend had been Yuki Tsunoda and Nicholas Latifi. And now Yuki Tsunoda has qualified into Q2. So that's just proof of how level the playing field is now with these new Formula One cars this year. And I should say top 13 was very close. It was very close. In the whole of that in the whole of Q2 in Q2. Now we get to the 5 fastest teams, the teams that were in Q3. So Esteban Ocon, with Alpine, so Esteban Ocon, the leader of that in P8 with which he was 1.1 seconds off pole. And Fernando Alonso, he as I said, he's been fast, he's been quick all weekend. It's a shame that he crashed the way he did at turn 11 at the back end of that session, which it looked like he could have grabbed provisional pole with that lap as well, which as I said, the cause would probably be a hydraulic failure on the car. Now we move to Mercedes. Now they're in an unfamiliar position. I mean, of course, Toto Wolff. Everybody was saying that Mercedes throughout testing before the first race, that everyone, and even during the practice sessions at Bahrain, everyone was saying, Mercedes is sandbagging, and they even mentioned this to Toto Wolff, and he's saying, no, we're not sandbagging. This is our true pace, and we're a long way off it. And out of the cars, of course, the main problem with these new cars, of course, is the word porpoising. These Mercedes cars are the worst. I mean, even Lewis Hamilton said, I think it was this morning in an interview, he said that he was very close to losing the car in a straight line because that's how bad the porpoising is. And it's not just the Mercedes as well. I think the only car I believe that I can remember that hasn't suffered from these issues has been Red Bull. Probably down to Adrian Newey's genius, let's just say, that of course it doesn't suffer the porpoising issues, but the other teams do. For some, it's very bad. I remember there was a shot. I remember there was a shot of I can't remember what practice session it was. It was through turn 9 and 10. It was one of the Ferraris, and it was just it suffered from porpoising very bad. And before you guys ask, yes, I will do a excuse me. I will do a sort of a explanation in a video at a later date about what the heck is porpoising all about with these new F1 cars. So Mercedes are in deep trouble. Ahead of them, and they're not even the fastest Mercedes-powered team, because the fastest Mercedes-powered team in this session was McLaren, who struggled in the first round at Bahrain. They showed signs of improvement in the second race at Saudi Arabia. And as I said, they did say, there's the potential of the MCL 36, the MCL 36, I believe it's called, keep track of the car names. Would work well around Albert Park, which, as I said, bloody oath it has. I mean, of course, both Norris and Daniel Ricciardo have been somewhat around the top 10, inside the top 10, or either that around the top 10 all weekend. And it proved that with Lando Norris qualifying the second row of the grid, about 8/10 off Charles Leclerc's fastest time, and Daniel Ricciardo, which I bloody hope for my fellow Aussies that he bloody hope goes well. Hopefully, Red Bull, Red Bull, of course, Max Verstappen, of course, he was 2/10 off pole, but nobody could probably get close to Charles Leclerc's fastest time. And Sergio Perez. I mean, I did hear that this. I think. To be honest, I'm not saying that he has a better shot of winning than Verstappen does, but I did hear that his strength is the 90-degree corners. That's why last year he won at Baku. That's why he won at Baku last year, not just because Lewis Hamilton went straight on at a turn, but his driving style is very, very good at 90-degree corners, and the Albert Park circuit has a lot of 90-degree corners. So, as a lot of them 90-degree corners, in turn 3 and then turn 4, and then of course essentially and then the back end of the circuit. So, that's his strength, and that could and his driving style obviously suits these new generation cars like a hand to a glove. Even though he has had a very good start to the year, even though of course let's not if you of course erase that that last lap retirement in Bahrain, he of course got pole position at Jeddah, and he could have won at Jeddah, unfortunately, if it wasn't for, of course, the safety car, which was ill-timed for him. So I think he'll be a very good contender. Finally, there's one last team, and it's the prancing horse, the Ferrari. It's Ferrari who are absolutely on fire in the first two races of the season, and particularly Charles Leclerc, the championship leader. Showing everybody why with as I said, a time of 1:17.868, which is a new track record. Obviously smashing the previous record, which was set in 2019. The last time these F1 cars raced here, and of course Carlos Sainz had an absolute shocker, as I said. The red flag with Fernando Alonso arrived at the wrong time for him, because I believe once the red flag came out, he was just meters away from crossing the start-finish line to complete his fastest lap, and then the red flag came out. But for Leclerc, that pole position wasn't without its issues, because it was confirmed later last night that Leclerc had to go to the steward's room for an unnecessary slow in lap. I would assume. I think. Please someone comment that if anybody knows about this further, please comment down below. I think. Would it be for the in lap going to for the interviews, or was it during Q3? I necessarily do not know, but anyways, he's cleared. He's still going to be on pole position. So Ferrari. So yeah, but as I said, it's probably going to be Leclerc versus Red Bull because, of course, Sainz, he's not. Of course, Leclerc's not going to have his wingman in sights anymore. So that means, unlike the first two races, he's going to probably have to fight off the Red Bulls by himself. So finally, so finally for my race predictions, now I'm going to do the podium. So I'm going to do a podium, and I'm going to do a podium. So I'm going to do the podium, the fastest lap, and a bold prediction. So the podium, I think. I'm thinking of. I think Leclerc's been on it all weekend. I think Verstappen, he's been there. So I think it'll be Leclerc that finishes in first. I think Perez will finish in second and Verstappen third. That's what I think. That's my podium. The fastest lap, I think it will be. Oh, that's a tough one. The fastest lap. It's probably cheap to give it to Leclerc, but I think I'll give it to Perez. I think he's been. I'll just get it right out there. I think Perez had the fastest lap. And finally, the bold prediction. You know what? This guy, he is the son of the 7-time world champion. I think it's time for him to get his first points in Formula One. I think the son of God himself, Mick Schumacher, will earn his first points. In Formula One in this race. A race where it was very successful for his father Michael, of course, winning 4 times. And yeah, so I think ironically this will be. I hope this will be the first time that he ends up scoring points. So yeah, so of course, it's the end of this video. So like this video, share this to anybody who is an F1 fan. Comment down below your predictions. Who do you want to see? Comment below your predictions. Who you think will finish on the podium, fastest lap, and what your bold prediction will be. And then lastly, somewhere down there, you click on the big red button just named subscribe. While you're there, click on switch on notifications and click on the notification bell to get notified when I next upload. But yeah, so until next time, guys, I will see you later.